A runaway teenager hiding in the woods witnesses something terrifying, a massive black bear charging straight toward a woman who doesn't see it coming. With nowhere to run and every reason to stay hidden, she makes a split-second choice that changes everything. This is the story of how one act of courage turned a scared girl into part of something she never expected to find. Julia pressed her back against the rough bark of the oak tree, her breath coming in shallow gasps. 6 days. That's how long she'd been out here, living on stolen granola bars and creek water that probably wasn't safe to drink. Her stomach twisted with hunger, but it was better than what waited for her back in that house. The memory hit her like it always did, sharp and unwelcome. Mrs. Henderson's voice echoing through the hallway. The locked bedroom door. The bruises hidden beneath long sleeves. Julia had learned to stay quiet, to make herself invisible, but invisible wasn't enough anymore. So she'd waited until the house went dark. Jimmy'd opened the second-story window with a butter knife and dropped into the bushes below. Now the forest was her home. At least trees didn't hit back. The sound of laughter pulled her from the memory. Through the ferns, she could see them. Maybe 20 people gathered in a clearing, motorcycles lined up like chrome soldiers. Hell's Angels. She'd recognized the patches immediately. Everyone knew to stay away from bikers, but watching them now, Julia saw something different. A woman with gray braids spun in lazy circles, beer sloshing in her hand, while others gathered around 2 arm wrestlers locked in mock battle. The smell of barbecue drifted through the air, making Julia's mouth water so intensely it hurt. She could steal something, wait until dark, grab a plate someone left behind. She'd gotten good at taking what she needed without being seen. Then she noticed the woman. Silver-streaked hair caught the late afternoon sun as she wandered away from the group, camera raised toward the trees. She was older, maybe mid-40s, wearing a leather vest with "Property of Martin" stitched across the back. She moved with the easy confidence of someone who'd never had to look over her shoulder. Julia envied that. The woman stopped, adjusting her lens to capture a cardinal perched on a low branch. She took 3 steps closer, then drifted forward again, completely absorbed. That's when Julia saw it. The bear emerged from the undergrowth like a shadow given weight, massive, black, moving with deadly purpose toward the woman who still had her eye pressed to the camera. Julia's heart stopped. The bikers were 50 yards away, their music too loud, their attention elsewhere. The bear's ears flattened as the woman drifted closer, oblivious. Run. Every cell in Julia's body screamed it. This wasn't her problem. She needed to stay hidden, stay safe, disappear before someone asked questions she couldn't answer. But then she remembered. Her father's voice, patient and steady during their last camping trip before the accident that took him. "Jules, if you ever see a bear, you make yourself big. You make noise. You show it you're not prey." His hands had been warm on her shoulders. Sometimes the scariest thing is exactly what you need to face. The woman lowered her camera. The bear was 30 feet away now. Julia burst from the trees. "Hey!" Her voice cracked, raw from disuse. She grabbed a rock, hurled it toward the bear. "Get back! Go on!" The woman spun around, eyes wide with shock. The bear paused, its massive head swinging toward this new threat. A scrawny teenager waving her arms like she'd lost her mind. "Get out of here!" Julia screamed, throwing another rock. Her legs trembled, but she didn't stop. She thought of her father. She thought of every time she'd wanted to fight back and couldn't. "Go!" The bear huffed, took 1 step forward. Julia's vision narrowed. She could hear shouting from the clearing now, the sudden silence of music cutting out, but she couldn't look away. She grabbed a fallen branch and struck it against a tree, the crack echoing through the forest. The bear turned. Slowly, with what almost looked like annoyance, it lumbered back into the brush and disappeared. Julia dropped the branch. Her hands were shaking so hard she couldn't make them stop. The woman stared at her, one hand pressed to her chest, her face drained of color. Then her knees buckled. Vanessa! A man's voice, rough with panic, as heavy boots pounded across the clearing. Julia took a step back, then another, her survival instincts finally kicking in. She needed to run. Now, before they asked questions, before someone called the police. But the man's eyes locked on hers as he dropped beside the collapsed woman, and something in his expression stopped Julia cold. "Don't move," he said, his voice carrying an authority that didn't sound like a threat. "Don't you dare move." Julia stood frozen as the bikers surrounded them, her heart hammering against her ribs, wondering if she'd just saved a life or destroyed what was left of her own. Martin cradled Vanessa's head in his lap, his tattooed fingers surprisingly gentle against her pale skin. "Babe, come on. Open your eyes." His voice cracked on the last word, and Julia watched something shift in the group of bikers surrounding them. The casual afternoon had transformed into something else entirely. "She's breathing," a woman said, kneeling beside them, her leather-cut red Trina. She had kind eyes that flicked toward Julia, then back to Vanessa. "Pulse is weak, though. Someone call 911. "Already done," a younger guy said, phone pressed to his ear. "They're close." Julia took another step backward. The Trilene was right there. She could disappear before the ambulance arrived, before anyone thought to wonder where she'd come from or why a teenage girl was alone in the middle of nowhere. "Where do you think you're going?" Martin's voice wasn't loud, but it cut through everything. He hadn't moved from Vanessa's side, but his eyes were locked on Julia with an intensity that made her freeze. "I should..." Julia's voice came out hoarse. "I need to go." "Like hell you do." A barrel-chested man with a gray beard stepped into her path. His cut identified him as Reaper. The name fit. "You just saved V's life. You don't get to vanish like smoke." "Reaper's right." Trina stood, brushing dirt from her knees. She moved toward Julia slowly, like approaching a spooked animal. "What's your name, honey?" Julia's mind raced through lies she could tell, but her tongue felt thick and useless. Before she could answer, Vanessa stirred, a soft moan escaping her lips. "Ness!" Martin's entire body sagged with relief as her eyes fluttered open. "Thank God. Stay still, baby. Ambulance is coming." Vanessa's gaze was unfocused, confused, until it landed on Julia. Recognition sparked. "The girl. Where's the girl?" "Right here," Martin said, his jaw tight. "And she's not going anywhere until we figure out what the hell is happening." The ambulance arrived in a swirl of red lights and urgent voices. Paramedics swarmed with practiced efficiency, blood pressure cuff inflating, questions firing about chest pain and medications. Julia tried to fade into the background, but Trina's hand rested lightly on her shoulder, just present. "You're riding with us?" Trina said quietly as they loaded Vanessa into the ambulance. It wasn't a question. Julia wanted to argue, to run, but exhaustion was catching up to her. 6 days of barely sleeping, of constant fear, of living on adrenaline and stolen food. When Trina guided her toward a pickup truck, Julia's legs followed without protest. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and bad coffee. Julia sat in a plastic chair, hyper-aware of how out of place she looked, dirt under her nails, clothes that hadn't been changed in a week, hair matted with leaves. A security guard glanced her way twice, and panic spiked in her chest. "She's with me," Trina said firmly, settling into the chair beside Julia. She had 2 styrofoam cups, and she pressed one into Julia's hands. "Hot chocolate. You look like you could use it." The warmth alone almost made Julia cry. She wrapped both hands around the cup, letting the heat seep into her frozen fingers. "Pre-existing condition," Trina continued, as if Julia had asked. "Vanessa's got a heart thing. Stress can trigger episodes. Doc says she'll be okay." But it was close. She paused, studying Julia's profile. "How long you been out there, kid?" Julia stared at the linoleum floor. "I don't know what you mean." "Sure you don't." Trina's voice held no judgment. Those clothes have been worn for days. You're dehydrated. I can see it. And you got that look. The one that says you're used to running. Footsteps approached before Julia could respond. Martin stood there, looking 10 years older than he had at the barbecue. Behind him, Reaper and 2 other club members formed an imposing wall of leather and steel. She's stable, Martin said, and the relief in his voice was palpable. They're keeping her overnight for observation. His attention shifted to Julia. You and me need to talk. Julia's muscles tensed, ready to bolt, but Martin lowered himself into the chair across from her, moving slowly, deliberately non-threatening. What's your name? He asked. The lie died in her throat. Julia. Julia. He tested it, nodded. I'm Martin. The woman you saved is Vanessa. She's my world. You understand? My whole damn world. His voice roughened. You didn't have to do what you did. That bear could have killed you. So I need to know why a kid alone in the woods risked her life for a stranger. Julia met his eyes. They were weathered denim, holding a steadiness that made lying feel impossible. I don't know, she whispered. I just couldn't watch her die. Something passed between them, an understanding that didn't need words. Martin glanced at Trina, who gave a small nod. You got somewhere to go? He asked. Julia's silence was answer enough. Thought so. Martin leaned back, his expression hardening into something resolute. Here's what's gonna happen. Doctors are gonna check you out. Don't argue. Then you're coming home with us. No social services, no cops unless you want them. You saved my old lady's life, and in this club that means something. That means everything. Martin. Reaper's voice carried a warning. You know the heat this could bring. I don't care. Martin stood, his decision made. She's under our protection now. Anyone got a problem with that? The bikers exchanged glances. One by one, they shook their heads. Trina squeezed Julia's shoulder. Welcome to the family, kid. Whether you're ready or not. Julia sat frozen, the hot chocolate cooling in her hands, unable to process what was happening. She'd spent 6 days running from captivity, and now these strangers, these criminals, if you believe the stories, were offering her sanctuary. The scariest part was how much she wanted to believe them. The spare bedroom in Martin and Vanessa's house smelled like cedar and old books. Julia stood in the doorway that first night, unable to make herself cross the threshold. The bed looked too soft, too vulnerable. She'd spent the last week sleeping with her back against trees, alert to every sound. You can lock the door if it helps, Vanessa said from behind her. She'd been discharged that evening with strict orders to rest. Her voice was still weak, but steady. We won't come in unless you ask. Julia's hand found the doorknob. Why are you doing this? Vanessa was quiet for a moment. Because someone should have done it for me once. And because you didn't hesitate when it mattered. She moved closer, careful not to crowd Julia's space. Get some sleep, honey. We'll figure everything else out tomorrow. But sleep didn't come. Julia lay rigid on top of the covers, fully clothed, listening to the house settle around her. Voices drifted from the living room. Martin on the phone with someone, his tone serious. Footsteps in the hallway made her bolt upright, heart hammering, before they passed by her door. She finally slept as dawn threatened the horizon, only to wake screaming from a nightmare where Mrs. Henderson's face morphed into the bear's. Light flooded the hallway. Martin appeared in the doorway, hands visible, non-threatening. You're safe, he said simply. You're safe here. The days blurred together in strange ways. Vanessa recovered slowly, spending most of her time on the couch with medical journals and terrible daytime television. Julia watched her from corners, still waiting for the catch, the moment when kindness would transform into something else. But it never came. Trina showed up on day 4 with bags of clothes. Guessed your size, she said, dumping everything on Julia's bed. And before you get all proud about it, these are from my daughter. She's away at college, won't miss them. Julia found 3 granola bars hidden under her pillow that afternoon. Old habits. Hey! Vanessa stood in the doorway holding the bars. Her expression was sad but understanding. There's food whenever you want it. Kitchen's always open. But I get it. Trust takes time. She set the bars on the dresser. Keep them if you need to. Just know you don't have to. It was the not pushing that got to Julia. The way they gave her space but stayed present. Martin left his workshop door open while he worked on bikes. A silent invitation. Vanessa cooked meals and simply left a plate out, no pressure to join. Trina texted terrible memes at random hours, never expecting responses. 2 weeks in, Julia woke to angry voices downstairs. Don't care what you think you're owed. That girl is staying here. Martin's voice, harder than she'd ever heard it. She's a ward of the state. A woman's voice, sharp and official. You have no legal claim. Julia's blood turned to ice. She crept to the top of the stairs, pressing herself against the wall. Mrs. Henderson stood in the living room, social worker beside her, playing the concerned guardian perfectly. Julia's troubled. She needs structure, professional help. These people are criminals, for God's sake. These people saved her life, Vanessa said coldly. She was on her feet despite Martin's worried glance. Where were you when she was sleeping in the woods? When she was starving? She ran away because she's defiant and… She ran away because you hurt her. Trina's voice cut through like a blade. She'd appeared from somewhere, arms crossed. We all see the scars, lady. We know what fear looks like. The social worker shifted uncomfortably. Protocol requires investigation. These things don't happen overnight. Then investigate. Martin's tone left no room for argument. But Julia stays here while you do. We've already contacted a lawyer. Try to remove her. And this gets messy for everyone. Julia's hands trembled against the banister. They were fighting for her. Actually fighting. Mrs. Henderson's eyes narrowed. You'll regret this. All of you. The door slammed behind them. Julia sank to the floor, unable to make her legs work. Jules? Vanessa appeared at the bottom of the stairs. How much did you hear? Enough. The word came out broken. Vanessa climbed the stairs slowly, settling beside her. You don't have to go back there. Ever. But if we're going to make this stick, we need you to tell the truth. All of it. To people who can help. Julia thought of locked doors, the hollow ache of skipped meals, bruises she'd learned to explain with practiced ease. She thought of how many times she'd wanted to speak up, but fear had stolen her voice. What if no one believes me? Then they'll have to go through us first. Martin stood at the base of the stairs, Trina beside him. Behind them, Julia could see more club members filtering in, Reaper, the younger guy from the hospital, others she'd seen around. A wall of leather and loyalty. We vote on big decisions, Martin continued. Family decisions. So I'm asking the club, Julia stays. Who's with me? Hands raised. Every single one. Unanimous. Reaper's gravel voice held a note of warmth. Kid's one of ours now. Days later, Julia sat in a courthouse hallway, Vanessa holding one hand and Trina the other. Her statement had been given, social services was investigating, and Mrs. Henderson's lawyer was already making threats. You don't have to do this, Vanessa whispered. We can find another way. Julia looked at the courtroom doors. Behind them, a judge waited to hear her testimony. Truth versus comfortable silence. Her voice versus years of trained submission. She thought of her father's last words before the accident. Be brave, Jules, even when it's hard. She thought of the bear and how she'd found her voice when it mattered most. No, Julia said, standing. I'm done running. I'm done being quiet. She walked toward the courtroom, her chosen family at her back, feeling something she'd buried so deep she'd forgotten its name. She felt strong. 3 months had passed since the courthouse. 3 months since Julia's testimony had exposed the truth about Mrs. Henderson, leading to an investigation that uncovered years of abuse toward foster children. The woman was facing charges now, and Julia was legally under Martin and Vanessa's temporary guardianship while the permanent paperwork crawled through the system. Tonight, the clubhouse was alive with celebration. Vanessa's recovery party read the banner stretched across the main room, though everyone knew it was about more than that. It was about survival, second chances, and the strange family that had formed in the aftermath of chaos. Julia stood near the bar, nursing a Coke and watching the scene unfold. She'd filled out, her face no longer hollow. Her hair was clean and cut, and the shadows under her eyes had finally faded. The leather vest Trina had given her last week hung perfectly across her shoulders. Julia, stitched across the back in bold letters. Not a full patch, she wasn't a member, but a symbol that she belonged. "You clean up nice, kid." Reaper appeared beside her, his usual scowl softened by something almost resembling a smile. "Never thought I'd see the day you stopped looking like you wanted to bolt every 5 seconds." Julia laughed, surprised by how natural it felt. "Never thought I'd see the day I didn't want to." Music thumped through the speakers, classic rock that made the floorboards vibrate. Vanessa was holding court near the pool table, looking healthier than she had in months, regaling a group with the story of her photography expedition that had almost ended in disaster. And then this skinny kid comes flying out of nowhere, screaming like a banshee. Vanessa caught Julia's eye across the room and grinned. "My hero." Julia felt heat rise to her cheeks, but she didn't look away. Compliments still felt foreign, but she was learning to accept them. "Jules." Martin's voice cut through the noise. He stood near the stage area, envelope in hand, his expression serious. "Come here for a minute." The room quieted as Julia made her way through the crowd. Trina squeezed her shoulder as she passed. Other club members nodded, faces showing something between respect and affection. Martin waited until she reached him, then handed her the envelope. His hands weren't quite steady. "Open it," he said. Julia's fingers fumbled with the seal. Inside was a stack of official documents, legal terminology swimming across the pages. Her eyes caught on key phrases: petition for guardianship, permanent placement, Julia Marichin. Her breath stopped. "It's official," Vanessa said, appearing at Martin's side, her voice thick with emotion. "Well, it will be official once the judge signs off, but our lawyer says it's a formality at this point. You're ours, Julia, if you want to be." The paper trembled in Julia's hands. She'd spent so long being nobody's priority, shuffled between homes like unwanted furniture, that the concept of chosen permanence felt impossible. "I know it's not the same as your dad," Martin said quietly. "We're not trying to replace him, but we want you to know you have a place here. Always." Julia looked up at them. This gruff biker and his fierce, kind wife who'd taken in a runaway and treated her like she mattered. "Why?" The question escaped before she could stop it. "Why would you do this?" Vanessa reached out, cupping Julia's face gently. "Because the day you ran toward danger instead of away from it, you showed us who you really are. And that person, she's someone worth fighting for. Plus," Martin added, his gruff tone masking deeper emotion, "your family have been since the moment you saved V's life. This just makes it legal." A cheer erupted from the crowd. Julia realized her face was wet, tears streaming down without permission. But these tears didn't taste like fear. "There's something else." Vanessa pulled a small velvet box from her pocket. Inside was a silver necklace with a compass pendant, worn smooth with age. "This was my mother's. She gave it to me when I felt lost, told me it would help me find my way home." She fastened it around Julia's neck. "You found your way to us, honey, and now you're home." Julia touched the compass, its weight solid and real against her chest. Around her, the club members raised their glasses. "To Julia," Trina called out. To Julia, the chorus echoed back. Voices rough with meaning. Someone started the music again. Reaper pulled Julia into an awkward side hug that lasted half a second before he grumbled something about getting too soft and walked away. Other members approached, hands landing briefly on her shoulder, nods that carried weight. Each gesture said the same thing: "You're one of us now." But later, when the crowd thinned and Julia stepped outside for air, doubt crept in. She'd learned the hard way that good things didn't last. Her fingers found the compass at her throat. What if she messed this up? What if she wasn't worth the fight they'd put up for her? Second guessing? Vanessa's voice came from the doorway. Julia didn't turn around. What if I screw this up? Then we'll figure it out. That's what families do. Vanessa moved beside her, shoulder to shoulder. You think Martin and I have it all figured out? We're making this up as we go, same as you. The honesty settled something in Julia's chest. She stayed quiet, watching the streetlights paint the motorcycles in amber. Martin appeared on her other side, his presence solid and grounding. You thinking about that day? Julia nodded. I keep wondering what would have happened if I just stayed hidden, if I'd kept running. But you didn't. Martin's voice was firm. You chose different. That's what matters. Julia looked at the envelope she still clutched, then at Vanessa and Martin flanking her like bookends. Not the family she'd lost, but the one she'd somehow earned. Yeah, she said softly, a smile breaking across her face. I guess I did. Outside, motorcycles gleamed under the streetlights, and somewhere in the distance, the forest whispered with wind. But Julia wasn't listening to it anymore. She'd found where she belonged, and the fear that had followed her since losing her father had finally gone quiet. She was ready. Sometimes family isn't where you start, it's where you're brave enough to land. If you've ever felt lost and then found your place, share your story in the comments below. And if this one moved you, hit that like button and subscribe to embrace the journey for more stories that remind us what really matters. See you in our next video.